Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rogue Wave podcast, the frequency for all things pop culture and the disruptors behind it. We talk comics, movies, TV, and pop culture every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on Facebook.com/Rogue Matter. No, we are Rogue Matter. YouTube.com/Rogue Matter. Twitter.com/Rogue_Matter. Don't everybody shake their heads at once. Twitch.tv/We Are Rogue Matter. We take this finally crafted video podcast, which I guess just seeing our faces blowing up on our big screen is throwing me off, so I'm going to get rid of that right now.
Blowed up!
I was enjoying it.
You were enjoying it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we take this finally videoed podcast, this birthday bash podcast, and then we turn it into the world's greatest audio podcast ever known to man that you can download on all major podcasting apps. Go Rogue. RogueMatter.com.
And I think we should say something about the fact that the three of us have not been in a room doing this together for 4 years, 5?
Yeah, since we were in Manhattan.
We don't have to mention that.
We were in Manhattan, and I only came in, once or twice, I think?
Yeah, I think something like that, yeah.
You were in the old... Were you ever in an old office?
I was never in the old one. I was in the second one you guys were in.
Okay.
In the shared space. And then you guys...
But you were there more than once, though.
I think I was there a couple of times. I think twice.
Yeah, okay.
But this is the first time the three of us are in the same room doing this, especially in this iteration of...
Well, this is now the official Sire Studios. So
well, there you go.
This is it. This is home.
The former name of this podcast.
Yes.
Yeah. This is the home.
And we got the place forever wired correctly, so that we'll never have
That's
to...
Right. We're never going to move another camera or microphone
Yes.
ever again.
Yes.
Now
we're putting all this stuff away.
Yes. And then we're going to have to do this all over
It is a very
again.
special episode because it is the gentleman to my left. It is his birthday. Knock on wood, Aaron says.
Yeah.
It's Mr. Hassan Godwin. A day after my birthday.
Which is the gentleman to my right.
Steve, when is your birthday?
I'm not having a birthday again until March.
Oh, okay. So we got... All right. So we crossed that.
We've got a little time.
Right,
Yeah. But it's close enough, though. It's closer than you think.
Yeah.
Why you got to be like that?
I'm sorry. It's just...
Seeing as I'm older than both of you.
I was just making you part of the festivities, but I will stop now.
I'm good.
Nothing draws big ratings like three old guys.
That's right.
Talking about, wow, movies weren't as good as when I was younger.
Oh, that's a spoiler, man. No spoilers. Don't spoil it.
Well, all right.
When I was a kid.
So here's what I got to tell you. You both came here to roast Black Panther 2. I actually really enjoyed it.
I'm not here to roast it.
We made a joke about roasting it.
We'll get into it.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
We're going to get into it.
We'll get into it. All right. Right now, all three gentlemen here have material on roguematter.com. So you can go check it all out. Steve is the creator of McBride and Groom.
I am.
Hassan is the cover artist on Seal of Fire, both Emergence and Exile. And yours truly, I have Time Trader, and basically I run production. So I got my hand in everything that's going on roguematter.com.
So why don't I get more work? That's the question.
My
That's what I
fingerprints are
wanna
on
know.
everything that comes out from
Nepotism,
Rogue
man. How
Matter.
come nepotism isn't working for me?
You
Nepotism.
see, what had happened was...
The quick answer is you suck. And
No.
therefore...
So the almighty head of Rogue Matter, he who will not be named because he doesn't like to be named for some reason.
Right.
She. We don't know.
Yeah, he or she.
Just threw that there.
Even though it's a he.
They.
Yes,
They just got
pronouns.
He's like, what do you think about Hassan for this project? And I'm like, that would be the ultimate worst thing to put Hassan on.
Excellent.
There really was. I'm not even joking. I forget what it was. It was some sort of project. And it had nothing, like it was the complete opposite of your style. And he's like, "What do you think? Do you think Hassan would like something like this?"
It was a comic book called Led Zeppelin Sucks,
Yeah.
and therefore I was the worst person
No,
alive.
I'm like, I don't know.
Is that artist who just applies a
don't think
Photoshop
that's a
filter?
really good idea at all. So trust me, your name comes up. It just comes up in all the wrong.
It's fine.
The wrong sections.
I will announce something in a couple of weeks.
We will help promote it.
Ooh, crypto.
We won't read it.
We will
help
see.
promote
Yeah,
it.
well you'll read it first, and then maybe if it wins your approval, it'll be promoted, but very soon.
So I think for the purposes of this a video podcast, I think I got to move Hassan to my right on this because I can't. Yeah, I gotta. Man, all this work, all this effort.
There's no need for that.
Well,
Everything's fine.
now Hassan, I got to talk to you like this. See? See how that works?
See, that's
you don't
funny.
even just look straight ahead and then pretend I'm sitting right across from you.
Yeah.
That's you see, they have no context until you give it to them,
We've got a commercial break coming.
and everything was going to change.
right now.
I'm going to do it. It's going to work. I feel
Everything's
good
gonna
about
change.
this. I feel very, very good about
This is
this.
going to be the most
All right.
pivotal commercial break you've ever seen.
What are we opening with?
Go to roguematter.com.
We-
Check out all
you're
the
in the
stuff.
middle
It's
of it.
free for now. We have all kinds of awesome stuff coming down the road, including the next issue of McBride and Groom. You can consume issue 1 for free. You'll
One and
still
a
be able to
half.
consume issue 1 for free, but it'll be a little different setup.
You can
We
consume
wanna- we
issue
wanna
1 and
create
half
a
of 2.
community. Also, do a search for the Rogue Matter community Facebook page.
Doesn't even mention issue 2.
No, I said you could. Yeah. Well, because we don't know what's going to happen with issue 2. See, you might need to
Oh.
sign up for an account.
It might be controversial.
Oh.
Oh, you meaning the accessibility of issue 2 you're talking
Ah,
about.
issue 2's coming. That's for sure.
Right,
Yes.
and I'm saying half of it's up now.
Well, yes, half of it's up right now.
That's what I'm saying. You can
preview
read
it.
half of issue 2 now.
I know. But
It's like
But
an
now you're
ash
saying
can.
you're not going to know what's
In
going
the
to happen
old-
with issue 2. So
in the
now,
old days.
since my editorial and creative directors don't actually tell me what's going on with my own work, clearly
because
it's
it-
all a big surprise.
There's a little
because
bit
it
of
hasn't
a,
happened yet.
It sounds like
No, clearly.
sounds like
It
there's
hasn't been
grievance there.
decided yet.
Okay.
In the old days, I'd call that an ash can.
But I think it's going to be very
An
exciting.
ass can.
It's an Afghan. Get
Right.
it right.
We're sitting on ass cans.
This is our birthday bash. We've already
Yes.
toasted a couple beers. Steve refuses
No,
to,
Steve-
and that's
Steve is
probably- that's probably better for all of us.
Steve's body is his temple.
Yes,
So-
that's fair.
I'm not sure for what religion.
Although he does pass out the Korean barbecue
Yes.
fairly
Yes.
liberally.
The
So-
Korean barbecue
and it
beef
is
jerky,
wonderful.
which is astounding.
I am now a devotee.
And
It is a
available at
wonderful-
Costco.
It's a wonderful experience
So there's
that Mike did not partake in, unfortunately.
When we come back,
Here's a commercial break that's pivotal.
this is the pivotal commercial break. Hassan will be on the other side of me. Steve will be on the other side of me. Yet we will not have moved
We
out
will
of
not
this
have-
chair, which
because
is fantastic.
because if we move, everything stops working. So
and then,
we're
and then,
stuck
and then
here.
we'll also talk about some stuff. So,
Oh,
yeah.
no.
we will
yeah.
dive headlong into Black Panther 2. I don't even think we need to really discuss anything else. I think that's enough.
I think the discussion
we'll
about
see.
Black Panther 2 is going to take up most of our time.
I think it is as well
So.
too. All right, when we come back, Black Panther 2, Wakanda Forever.
The only thing I did not like about that movie was
Seamless.
the designs.
Seamless.
That's
Look at
Oh,
this.
look at that.
And now, when I look up at the TV, it's sort of I'm looking in your direction
I know,
too. So I mean,
know. Look at that. Who knew?
amazing.
We just needed to test that whole thing. And look, I can look at Hassan now. This is probably the worst podcast we've ever done already. Like I think it's.
Wow.
I think it's great.
already-
I would listen to it.
I think it's already lined up as not being one of our best.
come
But
on.
I
That's
don't think
not
so.
possible. I don't
I think
think
you underestimate us as
Do you?
usual. As
all right.
usual.
I like that.
It's all right to underestimate us. When you overestimate us, that's when we get into trouble.
I will say it's the best caption we've ever done though. Wakanda Forever.
Because this is a question mark. That's
all,
okay.
all I saw was a dog do this.
That's well, then I achieved everything I was hoping to do. I mean, let's be honest. That's exactly what I was trying to do.
Michael,
Yes,
did you see Black Panther
of
2?
course I did.
Did you
Of course I
actually watch, or did you just watch the
In
trailer
fact-
a bunch
in
of
fact,
times?
I think we actually saw it at the same time because we were messaging each other around the same time.
Yeah.
So I think it actually worked out.
the
Not-
only
But
reason
not
I
you
didn't-
weren't messing each other during the movie though.
No, but the only
Okay,
reason I
good.
didn't message you about it at all
Yeah.
was because then we tend to delve into talking
yeah, I don't
about
like.
it.
I don't like delving.
Yeah.
you got to keep
And I
the
didn't-
delving.
I didn't.
I don't
yeah,
like
I don't
delving.
want to
I'm not a
delve.
delve fan.
I don't like to delve either.
No,
But
he
I mean,
loves to delve. Because
well,
then he says-
No, I'm saying you
No,
got to
no.
keep the delving for this though.
yes.
I don't.
Exactly.
I don't like to be stopped mid delve. That's what I meant.
Right. The other thing is too is like, and this is something that Hassan and I have found when being on a podcast together, that a lot of times you'll go in with an idea or a thought, and you'll start explaining, you'll start going in, you'll start hearing other people's opinions or more discussions on it, and things will change.
That's right.
Your view of what you've just experienced will change. So
That's
it's
happened a few
it's
times.
good to stay cold and come in, just speak your piece, and then go, Oh yeah. Oh, like listen.
Right. The process of it changing.
Yes.
Is actually the whole podcast. Like that's the point of the podcast. And many times when Hassan changes his point of view because of the wonderful words of wisdom I spew, I mean that's what it's all about. Like that's what makes this show.
I will say that's kind of what I live for. Those rare moments
it
when
happens
that
more than you
happens.
think.
Just before we move on, is that a signed 8x10 of Dudley Moore?
No, that is my cousin Chip. Not Chip. My cousin from
just looks like
from
Dudley
Eric
Moore.
Estrada. It's my cousin Eric Estrada. Eric Estrada is my cousin.
Huh. Okay.
I
That
met
is-
him once when I was like
He might
5
be
years
a
old.
he might
That
be
is
a,
not
he might
true.
be a guest.
No, it's
at,
absolutely
Eric
through marriage.
Estrada.
Yeah, through marriage.
he might be a guest at
his
Planet Comic Con
mom-
this year, so we'll see what happens.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He won't remember me, but well, he'll remember his mom, I would think.
One would hope.
And I'd be like, your mom married my great uncle.
Oh, for God's sakes, that's
Yeah.
too much. All right. Okay.
I
From
am
here,
your
it looks like
brother's
Dudley Moore. So.
father's cousin's former roommate.
Okay, we can move on.
So, all right,
But you did see the movie.
here's the thing about the movie, right? You guys
Okay.
came in, and you were saying we're gonna, I mean, you were joking, maybe half joking, I don't know, about roasting the movie. I always love to give you my dad's opinion of the movie because it's actually I feel like a very good. It's an outsider. He has
Yeah.
no concept of like the
It's a
Marvel
good.
universe.
It's a good grounding.
He's
Right.
never
Test.
seen any of the Marvel Universe stuff.
No, he sees it with me, but he's not like a Marvel universe guy to where
He doesn't know
Okay.
the comic books in the
he
context.
doesn't know
of a lot
anything
of
about the
stuff.
comic books. He's just coming in to see a movie.
Okay.
and this is it. His initial reaction was weird movie.
Had he seen the
Very
original? Had he seen
strange
the
movie.
first one?
Yes. We
Okay.
saw it together. Yes. And he just said, strange movie. That's what he said. And I said, you know what? And this is my overall take on the movie, which is actually an overall take on the director. He builds worlds very well. I went into this movie and I enjoyed seeing the world of Namor. I also felt, much like I did in the first movie, the way it was shot, this is not a Marvel Universe movie. I know it is. I know it's connected. I know it's part of the MCU. But the way it's shot is shot unlike any other Marvel franchise. If you told me this was the Marvel Universe, I wouldn't believe you because it's sort of the Marvel Universe. But we didn't have... It was the first movie that didn't feel like it was just a segue for the next Marvel movie.
That's true.
I know that there's...
No.
I know that there is a mid-credit scene that is basically setting up the next,
Right.
iteration of Black Panther down the line.
Yes.
Great. I know that there is a character, Ironheart, in the film that is going to get her own Disney Plus show.
Sure.
However, right. However, other than that, this was almost like Avatar meets Aquaman.
Wakanda Avatar.
Right.
What?
Right. It kind of was meets
Yes.
the world of Black Panther, and I was like, you know what? I'm down.
Yeah,
down.
we're gonna be
There's-
underwater a lot this year.
There's
at
a-
the end of this year.
Right. There's a gravity. There's a gravity to this, to the way he shoots things that makes this feel larger than life. It feels like a blockbuster. It feels like an old time blockbuster. And I'm not talking about story, and I'm not talking about anything like that. I'm just talking about I go in there and I'm like, wow, this feels like I'm watching a movie. I'm not watching the latest installment in the MCU franchise. And for that, I walked away feeling good. They were put in an impossible situation.
Yeah.
And
it's
had
pretty
to
bad.
make the best of it. Was it the greatest film I ever saw? No.
No.
Was it the best Marvel film? No. But given the circumstances and again the way it was shot, I walked out feeling like I was like, you know what? I'm not going to think too deep into this one. I just walked away and felt good about it, and that was my initial impression walking away.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with you on that. I think it had a heavy lift to do. I think for the heavy lifting it had to do,
Yeah.
it did a really good job of lifting under the circumstances. It's ironic. I don't know. I won't know how I feel about this movie until the third movie, whatever the third movie comes out. Because if this is a transitional movie, like
Yeah.
it feels, then it'll be really strong. And I'll think it's a really strong transitional movie.
Yeah.
If this is just like the direction, or they don't make any more movies,
Sure.
I will think that this is a decent sequel.
Okay.
But it also is a franchise-killing sequel.
Yes.
So, I think, unfortunately, it's kind of like The Empire Strikes Back. It's like it does require a third one in order for me to know exactly how good this one is. I think for what they tried to do, and I think they, I know that they wanted to honor Chadwick Boseman by not recasting, but I think also by naming his son T'Challa, spoiler, and and basically by the time the next movie comes around, he'll be of age where he'll wear the Black Panther mantle.
I don't know about that. He's pretty young.
Yeah, but they'll
That's a quasi young though, right?
Yeah, because we're in a nebulous time with the MCU because it's 5 years in the future now. It's anytime. It's anytime they want to make it.
When did Endgame come out?
2019.
Okay, so 2019 is what, 3 years ago?
Yeah, but 2019.
Moved ahead
no, but
5
then they said
years.
5 years
2019
plus 1.
So they're technically in 2024 now.
They're actually 6 years ahead because they said 5 years plus a year because it had been a year since.
Sure.
Yeah, but they can just say because we're not getting
it's
an
not
MCU.
Linear time.
I understand that, but they also have to keep some semblance of coherence across the MCU, and they've managed to keep it roughly in our current time frame, give or take. And they're not just going to start suddenly. I don't think Feige's going to suddenly start advancing time frames in order to age a character to be old enough to take over.
I agree with you respectfully, but I do believe that he's going to be the focus of the next movie. God, who knows how long it'll take to get that next movie out, but I don't think they're going to keep it as Shuri, especially for two reasons. A, because it's a traditionally male character, even though Shuri was Black Panther for for a little while in the comic books. And B, there's a little bit of a decent backlash to this because it's an all female led movie, and I don't have a problem with it at all. However,
never once even factored into my thoughts.
It's definitely factored into mine, without a doubt. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It was just a noticeable way.
I can honestly say, going through this movie, I never even once thought about the fact that Namor was the only main male character in this film.
I think it's a well balanced movie, and I think all the characters were wonderful. And I think it strikes the right tone of what you do when you have a tragic loss, and you still have a tremendous load of things that you have to do. You have a lot of maintenance. You have to take care of a kingdom. You have to keep going. I think it strikes that chord very well. I'm just saying, for the sake of getting Black Panther to what it was at the time of the first one, getting it back to the franchise height that it was at the first one. I don't know if Shuri is the person that's going to carry that for the next movie. And I think if she shares the mantle with her nephew now, I think there's a better chance of getting us back to the majesty of that first movie, as opposed to... And then this movie will be a very powerful transition movie. But I think if they just keep it going like this, I don't see how much more story they can tell with it. Because she's already had her struggle with coming into her own, and and I mean, M'Baku, I don't know how that ended. I don't know if M'Baku is now the king of Wakanda. They kind of left that open.
Very ambiguous.
Yeah, so I don't know what the role is. I don't know what's going on with that. But
so a couple things. I'm glad you pointed out the female led, because, and again, I'm not saying good or bad, but it was noticeable to me. Like, it was noticeable when on screen you have the three major characters in the film. Is Danny Guerrero's character. You have Shuri, and then you have Riri, and they for the most part play like the biggest role.
Yeah.
A big chunk of the second act.
And there's nothing wrong with it. It's
except
a
for Agent,
because this is Black Panther is originally a male character, and there were more male characters. Namor, like you said, was the only male character. It was noticeable. Look, it's a noticeable aspect to me, anyway. But
I think the movie is fantastic for the sake of they understood we got to pack this. We have to have all of our star power work in tandem to make up for the loss, the very noticeable loss of Chadwick Boseman.
Correct.
Because I think he carried the last movie, and he carried his weight of of Infinity War.
Right.
And then, you know, of course, that's why he was like the first person to come through the portal at the end of Endgame, because of the, you know, because they discovered that he, you know, he was charismatic.
His movie made $1 billion.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They've discovered his character was charismatic enough that attracts a lot of attention. Now he's lost, so they didn't. I think the mistake would have been if they recast it. And they would hope that the new person, they would bank on the new person being as charismatic as Chadwick Boseman was, and then it wouldn't work. There's a very big chance if they just moved on, it wouldn't have worked. But like if they go through this, which is what they did, and they take the chance and they lean into it, and they make this a decent transition movie, which like it seems like it is, but like I said, I won't know until I see the third one. I think they will have overcome that problem. And technically they did recast T'Challa because they named the new his son T'Challa, so technically is a recast.
Right.
So if he comes of age and joins the MCU, it will still be T'Challa's Black Panther. And you could say that the Black Panther from the comic books is his son as opposed to the original T'Challa, and you can make it work.
Yeah.
I think it can work. It's just I cannot make up my mind until I see
What
it.
they've done is set up Phase 8.
Yeah.
It's essentially what.
Which is basically what Marvel does.
And yes, but again, it was at the end of the film, and it was a surprise. Spoilers. And surprise.
Yeah, I already blew that for everyone listening, unfortunately.
So it again, it didn't feel as if it was the main point of the film was to do this. Because it was really kind of an afterthought to this whole thing. It was really the film was Shuri coming to terms with, you know, her brother's loss. Steve, what were your
we don't have
thoughts?
Steve's thoughts.
We haven't dived into what you
came
away with it.
So when I walked out of the movie, I felt profoundly different about it than I do today, I'll be honest.
When I walked out, I punched the first person that suggested I see this movie.
I spoke to Hassan briefly over text about this, just saying I had very specific thoughts, and I have discovered that over the last 2 days that I have made some significant discoveries about modern film in general.
Wakanda's not a real place, you know that.
Yes, and so
make sure.
So my thoughts have actually somewhat pivoted on this a little, because one of the things that drove me crazy about the movie, I don't really feel is a fair thing to knock it for. And I understand, again, to Hassan's point, the path that it had to take. Listen, at the end of the day, if the Easter egg is ever put out there somewhere, I would love to read Coogler's draft of this script that he had ready when Chadwick passed away, because I would love to see what that movie looked like.
Yes, and there is a script out there.
Well,
that is
right.
You know.
So that being said, I think this movie is really, you know, again, like I've said before, most Marvel films, they're very well produced, they're well put together. You can't knock them for not being part of the overall and the success of being part of the overall Marvel picture. Mm-hmm. I think that this film is very successful at what I feel it was trying to do. They did have an incredibly difficult path to take after Chadwick's passing. I really liked what they did with Namor. I really liked how their choice to base his heritage and tie it in with spoilers, with the
Mayan religion,
the destruction of the Mayan religion and people, was a really smart move. However, I think that this time around, Coogler, instead of, because he already has established what we see as Wakanda and the Black experience, he is now doing with Namor and the Hispanic experience, and now world building for that race.
Yeah.
So I think that he's now carrying double duty in the movie. Now, I liked a lot of the things they did with Namor because historically, if you go back with Namor, especially in the 70s and 80s, Namor hated the surface world. And his attitude was very much in alignment with how he behaves in this movie. So I actually liked that they made him not necessarily the bad guy, but
no, they made him Namor.
They made him very Namor. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
There are parts of this movie that very much felt like Wakanda Avatar, as we joked earlier.
Yes.
This movie is 2 hours and 41 minutes long. Now, given 8 to 10 of that is credits. But I feel very much like Marvel was never going to come back at Ryan Coogler about the cut.
How long it is.
And I really feel like when you see this movie feels like a director's cut. This feels like he put in everything he wanted to put in.
And you're thinking kitchen sink? It's a kitchen sink kind of situation.
I think there's stuff in this movie that didn't need to be here. I think there's stuff
like
that
what? I'm actually curious about this because I actually didn't notice the length when I was there, and I agree with you. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes, but
most times when I'm in a movie watching it the first time, I don't notice the length of time either. If I do during the movie, that's a really bad situation.
But that's what you're saying.
But
right?
but I feel like when I watched it, this movie could have been slimmer. It could have been.
I will agree. There are moments, like I don't think it was for me specifically. I don't think it was too long, but there are definitely moments in the movie where I'm like, if it ended now, it would be perfect, or if this
Right.
wasn't there, it would be perfect.
Yeah, it's not suffering from Point Break syndrome where it's like a movie ends and then ends again and then ends again and then ends again. It's not that syndrome. I think that it feels to me like there's stuff in here, and I understand that there's stuff in it that has to be in there to propel the overarching phase story forward. Yeah. All the stuff with Martin Freeman and
Marvel movies always have so
Valerie,
much work to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Valerie, what's her name? So, they've while this story is not necessarily completely tied in with everything that's happening in the MCU, maybe right now, this second, it has to be peripherally connected because it has to be able to tie it back into the timeline.
Sure.
So, and I think again, how that situation sort of resolves itself is obviously something that's going to bring us into obviously not only future films but future Marvel TV stuff that's happening at Disney Plus. I'm at this point, since they've already announced Secret Invasion as a TV series, I basically take anything that happens now or has happened in the MCU is essentially changeable back to an original state. Like any character that's died, any character that has been removed from the queue, whatever, and none of it's going to matter because once you bring a Secret Invasion into the situation, you can bring back every single one of those characters by just saying, oh, well, she was actually a Skrull.
Yeah, multiverse. Yeah, or because of that in the although they do,
and not even from the multiverse standpoint,
right? But I mean, also you can do that. With the Skrull or multiverse, you could say
I
that.
love.
Although supposedly Ant-Man's going to end the multiverse, so who knows? Probably not.
I love how Kevin Feige, when he first started the MCU, everyone's like, "Well, you can't do that. You can't have storylines running through feature films. Like that'll never work. That'll never happen." And now, not only has it happened, but everyone tries to copy it.
Right.
But now you get to a point where they are actually running into the same issue you had with comic books in general. Like, comic books in general ran into the issue of, okay, Batman all of a sudden now is 10 years old, 20 years old, 30 years old, 60 years old. How do we tell new stories? Now, mind you, movies have a much worse severity when it comes to this because actors,
that's why they
age.
Usually have to stay pretty much within the timeline.
But they are now having to deal.
Steve was saying.
Yeah, they are now having to deal with the same problems that. I mean, think back to Heroes Reborn back in 1997 when they tried to modernize Fantastic Four. They tried to modernize Avengers, into it, so it wasn't built in the 60s or 70s. I mean, look at Frank Castle. He's a Vietnam vet. A Vietnam vet right now is 80 years old.
Yes.
So
Right.
it's like,
Yeah, it's
Right.
pretty bad.
eventually when you tie yourself to a history, to a chronology, an actual timeline, you're just going to run into these issues. And I find it fascinating how Marvel is now, like the studio is now dealing with these
Or you get
conundrums.
into bad situation like the One More Day situation, right?
Sure.
Because you have not aged up Spider-Man enough so that you can just keep. So now your mission is almost to completely rebound the entire story by making a deal with the devil, where he goes back to square one again. You don't want to have to do that.
There's a whole underground Twitter movement of
To
the
undo
majority
that.
of Spider-Man film fans who want him married.
Yes, you ran into that.
Did you know about
headlong.
this? Did I ever? Did you listen to our show? Or when I was telling this, I got into a Twitter fight. I don't normally even go on Twitter to
Right, because
argue.
you both decide and don't like Twitter.
I like it for sports because I like it for news and sports because I have like lists of
Yes.
like reports. So breaking news happens. Like
Yeah.
All right, let me get it right there. But some like Spider-Man was trending one day, and so I clicked on it,
Big mistake.
and someone wrote. They wrote a very incendiary tweet though, where they're like,
Really? On Twitter?
I know, it's crazy, right? They're doing the algorithm's job for them.
Yes.
They're like, when they tell me that it was the Back to the Future picture where like, the people were erasing like the animated GIF of like from the first Back to the Future with the photograph, and the people were
Just tell me the crux of the idea here.
Well, no, I had to show you that. So basically, he was saying, when you tell me that a married Spider-Man is wrong, you're telling me I have no place in the Marvel universe. Was essentially what the original tweet was. And it's like
So he was making
the
the Spider-Verse about himself.
correct.
the
He was
dumbest
mad
take
that
I've ever-
Spider-Man
That's very Twitter.
that they unmarried Spider-Man, and now him as a married man doesn't matter. He doesn't matter because apparently everyone in this generation or the social media generation need these movies to feel good about themselves. I didn't realize
this is an entirely different conversation because now you're talking about people who feel the need to define their lives by things outside their own life.
Hassan and I have talked about this stuff that we used to enjoy as hobby /
Yes.
pass the time has become like religion for people. Like
Well,
literally
that's
religion
on them.
for people. What's that? Yes.
That's on them, just like religion is. But we're
No,
not going
agreed.
down that road.
Agreed, but that's the thing. So with the One More Day topic, apparently I went down a rabbit hole. I wrote them. I said,
Well, I'm the one who brought it up, but
no. But
But he's talking about his.
his own rabbit hole.
I went down a
situation.
rabbit hole with this with a number of people because I just dared to say, look, they weren't trying to piss anybody off. We all worked at Wizard when this stuff was happening, and like we were privy to the editorial. They basically said, look, we've got a DH Spider-Man. A married Spider-Man tends to be older, not seen as younger, because when you're married, it's true. You eliminate. Trust me, I'm married. It's a totally different life. Like it really is. I'm not saying it's a good or bad life. Just saying it's different, right? And so they're like, look, we need to DH Spider-Man. There were creators they were trying to get to come on and do Spider-Man at the time. I remember Dan Riley used to tell me like stories, and and they're like, yeah, they can't get these guys because A, they don't want to be the one to divorce Spider-Man, but B, they don't want to, tell a married Spider-Man story. So to them, it was like, they're going to pass on doing Spider-Man. It wasn't until JMS took it up that, people, found an approach that worked, right? But the point being is Marvel had to de-age Spider-Man,
Yeah,
or at least
it's
they
a
felt
lot
they did. Right or
a
wrong.
lot of hard work,
Right.
to do that.
And so now the MCU, to tie it back into what we were talking about, is at a point where if T'Challa's son is... How old do you think he is now in that? It's very tough to tell, actually, right? 6, 7?
Well, if you theorize,
I would have
he's
said
over,
7, yeah.
Yeah, he's about 7, because if you theorize, he probably didn't get blipped like everybody else, theoretically.
Yeah.
So he's probably,
Oh, well, no, then he can only be like roughly 6 or 7.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
you said.
Like,
Like
yeah.
the film
that's
came
what-
out in 2018, right? It was
I was
2018 or
agreeing with
2019? 2018, I
18.
think?
19.
Was it
It was
19? I thought it was 18.
2019.
No, I think...
Okay.
All right, well, give or take. So
All right.
You're
either-
talking
either
about
way.
Endgame.
No, Black Panther.
Black Panther.
Oh, no, 18.
2018.
Okay.
Okay.
So you
No,
figure he knocked her up in 2018. It's 2019. He's born.
So delicate.
He knocked up
so,
he knocked up Nakia.
So classy.
He did. I mean,
He's so classy.
Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong, right? He knocked her up in 2018. 2019. Hey, look, out of wedlock too, so definitely knocked her up.
I thought that was, that's the part I thought was pretty clever because when
somebody chooses not to get married doesn't necessarily.
True.
But
when I was watching,
he knocked her up.
when I was watching the film, I was like, why is she even there? Because like theoretically,
right.
You know, if you're just theoretically the girlfriend of the guy who's the entire movie's about, he's not there anymore. The only thing you would be there for would just be to grieve.
Yeah.
You know? So when they showed that she had moved on and she had opened a school and I'm like, okay, that kind of, and then they justified it within story as to why not only is she not in the profile, in the high profile with the kingdom, but also why she's in this story because they have to go to her for a specific thing. So then but the real reason that she's there is because she's raising the Black Panther.
Erin is much smarter than all of us, by the way. Because Erin said the second she wasn't at the funeral, I knew she had a kid.
Okay.
What that really tells me, though, is that Erin has now been on their show long enough as a producer that she knows she needs to run out and see these films as quickly as we do.
Yeah.
Or else she'd be sitting there with like earplugs the entire time, and it just would make for a horrible show.
This is an occupational hazard.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing is, I was kind of hoping that they would have gotten another Black Panther in this story.
They did.
They did.
Do.
And Sherry is, I don't have a problem with it. But the only reason that is somewhat disappointing is I was hoping that she would be the Black Panther that leads into the transition to the next Black Panther.
Yeah.
As opposed to she being, as opposed to the story being her coming into her own and becoming the Black Panther. That was my only problem with this story is like, I've seen this story.
Yeah.
Like now I'm going to have to pick up the mantle. I think it would have been more interesting if she had just assumed the mantle without the wool gathering and the and she was just the pinnacle. She was the it person of the story, and then she hands the mantle over, as opposed to like, because I think the thing would be between her and Namor suffers from I don't have exact words for it. It kind of suffers from shifting. I would coin it as shifting hero syndrome, because Namor's perspective is understandable, and they gave him way too much context for him to credibly be a mustache twirling villain.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So you don't necessarily want to see him defeated,
Right.
but you do root for Sherry. But you don't necessarily, you kind of want them to kind of meet in the middle and to kind of have a mutual understanding. So I kind of wish the story was about a third villain that we didn't see, so that they would have had their issues early on, and then they would have come together towards the end of it. Because when she defeats him,
I think that's too typical.
Yes, there's a danger.
The problem is, though, Namor is a central character of the MCU, so he can't just be a villain.
Not only that, just because of the way the story's done. Yes, absolutely. That's also a typical issue. That's kind of like what was that movie War with Jet Li and Jason Statham, where it's like, come on, these guys are good. In 5 minutes, these guys are going to be fighting somebody else.
Right.
I understand what you're saying, but if they set it up that it was going to have to be Sherry who was going to have to figure out how to wear the Black Panther mantle, and while you're watching the film, she actually kind of comes to grips with that very early on in, like, say, Act 1 and end of Act 1 or Act 2. Then even if it does roll out as a story that you've seen before, you would kind of be a little off balance because you were expecting that story to take that track instead of another track.
So this feeds into what was initially one of my big problems with the movie, and which now has shifted, is that I grow weary of films that focus or utilize grief and trauma as your main driving energy for your entire film, and getting over grief, getting over trauma. I know it's a very hot button thing right now for it to be happening in movies. I see it in every third or fourth movie I watch. And to be honest, a huge portion of horror films use that, obviously, and that's a lot of what I watch. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that I have learned in the last few days by doing a little research and actually thinking about Black Panther and it's not necessarily just using that, but it's how you go about it. And I think that along the lines of what you just said, Hassan, that had they gotten her over it or gotten her through it enough to just accept the wearing of the mantle in the first act, it would not have felt as genuine. I think we would be looking at that and be like, man, she got over that way too quick. And I understand your point, but unfortunately, the point you're making or your thought on it feeds into the idea that if we start shifting things around, then we start causing other problems to our film. So I think that making this a film-long path for her was less of an issue for me than about the fact that, listen, again, they had an impossible task. We know that. But as I said, I love to have seen what this movie would have looked like if Chadwick Boseman was in it. Because honestly, if you
Different movie.
well, completely different film. Because if you think about it, he had been in this movie. Basically, none of the underlying elements of what happened in this movie none of it would be there. It's like he had to completely, essentially, almost rewrite this entire film, and not just because Chadwick Boseman's not here, but because the entire crux of this film is built on something that would not have taken place.
Too, though. They would have written her out too because she was on social media earlier in the year. She said some things she wasn't supposed to say.
They wouldn't have written her out. They would have kept her as the. I don't know if we would have seen Ironheart.
No. Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, you wouldn't.
I think I agree with what you're saying. I'm looking at it not from the perspective of this story that we got and how you feel about the story that we got. I'm talking strictly about how to give the audience something that they weren't expecting, right? For what the story is, the story couldn't have happened any other way than it happened. And yes, if we got this story and she got over it and was the Black Panther in Act 1 of this story, then I absolutely would agree with you. Like, oh my God, like if you're trying to sell us that this is a heartbreaking, cataclysmic incident in their society, and his closest sibling was just like, nah, all right, I'm Black Panther now, all right. That totally would have thrown me. It would have been a little too much. But I don't think they sold Sherry against Namor, because I wasn't rooting for either one of them to either win or lose.
Let me ask you a question.
One more thing. Wait, one second.
I have a question based on that exact thing you just said.
Also, I don't buy that they decided that Wakanda could not beat the Namorians, because we can't call them Atlanteans because
does somebody own Atlantis?
Well, the whole argument was that they didn't want to confuse people with Aquaman.
Yeah, so they just didn't call it. And rightfully so.
They
just didn't. It is Atlantis, but they just aren't calling it that.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just like the Skrulls from the.
Yep.
Yeah, from the X-Men movies.
Right.
I don't buy that Wakanda couldn't beat them. I would have bought more that Namor's selling point is if we go to war with each other.
Yeah.
We're going to weaken each other so much we can't go to war with the surface. And I think that would have made a more compelling argument than, you can't beat us. It's like
stronger together than separate.
What are you talking about? We can't beat you. We're Wakanda.
Yeah.
Of course, you can't spend the first movie saying that this is a hidden world power.
Right.
And then talk about later, have a guy just mention we are better than you and have them because if America, if this happened to us and someone came to the American president and was like, you don't want to go to war with us, we'll defeat you, the first thing we'd be like, yeah, show me,
They
That's
they
not gonna
did
happen.
seem to make the whatever Namor's race entirely overpowered.
Or they capitulated to the possibility that these guys were more powerful without any demonstration from them.
Right.
Because these guys came to the surface and they had a whole bunch of fights with the Dora Milaje, and they didn't exactly defeat the Wakandans.
Right.
They were stronger than the Wakandans were used to fighting anybody, but it wasn't like it was a rout. Like they were, so.
Right.
That much I didn't know. That's kind of more of a Rian Johnson kind of situation with The Last Jedi, where they constantly had to keep mentioning we're losing. Like the whole movie is like we're losing ships, we're losing. Like, okay, we can see that, It's like you're fighting the Empire. I get it, but this didn't. Some of the stuff didn't make sense. It was orchestrated peril.
Right.
Like we're in trouble just because the script says we're in trouble, as opposed to. It would have been better if the compelling argument would have been like, look, eventually you're Wakanda, you're a world power, we are a hidden world power, we're Atlantis, quote unquote, we're a world power. We are going to eventually someone's going to try you guys. Someone
right.
out there is going to try you guys. If we got together, we could guarantee your supremacy. If we ended up fighting each other, both of us would get weak and we would be defeated by some third party. That would have been a more compelling argument, and it would have made more sense considering what Marvel was trying to build.
But then who would they have fought in that?
They wouldn't have had to fight anybody.
Then
but
there wouldn't be a film.
They wouldn't have had to fight anybody, but the argument to each other was that we would be weaker if we fought, as opposed to we will beat you if we fight. Because it's like, I don't buy that. I just don't buy it.
I got you.
It's
semantics in the
because they didn't show us
right.
they didn't demonstrate the Atlanteans' power to such an extent where you were convinced that Wakanda wouldn't have been able to beat them.
Right.
And if Wakanda had stepped up onto the world stage to the point where maybe supposedly they joined the they were part of NATO or whatever, whatever you wanted to, then that means that they would have the Atlanteans would have to beat the whole world.
Right. Well,
so that would have made no sense.
And here's where I think that they set something up, because I think that last scene with Namor when he's painting the painting on his wall of him aligned with the Panther, and
and the girl's talking about you're weak, and
that Namora is
Yeah.
telling him how this, and he turns to her and explains basically he got exactly what he wanted, just from a different direction.
Right.
And without any true consequence.
Right.
And I think that right there is one of the keys to this movie. I think the fact that they showed that he is not only the feathered serpent god, but that, and as we know, when it has not been introduced yet in the MCU, but it's coming in the whole Illuminati storyline, you're going to understand his position on the earth is much, much more important than being the leader of this underwater race.
This little kingdom.
And I think that they're setting him up to be a potential. And just as we're listening here to you guys talking, and I'm now seeing it as we move forward into what we perceive to probably be our next big bad, which is going to be Kang.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're now saying you're going to have Namor be like, well, he can do whatever he wants because he's going to kill all you guys, and then we're still going to be living under the water.
Right.
And at some point, obviously, they'll get pulled into it, and you'll see the full force of his people coming to bear. And it will make a difference.
Yeah, that's the great and the terrible thing about the MCU is that this 2 years from now, 3-4 movies from now, this movie, all the moves that they made.
That's
in
12
this
movies
movie,
from now.
Well, yeah, I'm just all right. All the moves that they made in this movie that are kind of questionable, or, might make way more sense. Like, of course, that's why.
But I think that's the positive side of what Kevin does with the MCU and the film series.
Well, let me ask you a question on this. So let me ask you both a question on this. As three get off my lawn guys, the way you painted the picture, Steve, it's like, well, with the Illuminati storyline coming up and the
I don't know that they're going to go with the Illuminati,
I'm
but they've introduced everyone, and once Reed Richards comes in, which they technically have introduced now.
Right. I'm just using that as an example, right? And,
Yep.
And with the Illuminati storyline that hasn't shown up in the MCU yet, the Skrulls, which have just barely been introduced, but the Secret Invasion storyline is coming up. We know all this stuff. We know all this stuff from the comics.
Yep.
Is there a point to where it used to be, for me, as a comic book fan, the excitement was, and this is your main crux against the X-Men films, right? It was just a thrill to see the characters we grew up on the big screen. Now we've evolved to such a point to where that's not enough of a thrill for me. It's not enough of a thrill for me personally to just see characters I grew up...
Just to see Namor?
Yeah, just see Namor. I mean, it is... I gotta admit, still kind of cool. Right? Still kind of cool.
You gotta
to see
admit, like pulling off a guy with wings on his feet and not making him look like a goofball was like,
no,
right,
agreed.
Well done.
But I guess my question to you is, at what point does the MCU just become, or has it already, just become its own thing to where we don't even need to reference the comics anymore? That they've built up enough of their own history that writers are going to come in. Would it still hold the same attraction to you guys if it evolved to that point?
The answer is they evolved to that point very on, I'd say, in phase 1. And 2, yeah, of course. I mean, you're 20-some movies into a series now.
Yeah.
And we're going to see it 3 days after it's released. So, I mean, I don't think, that, I mean, understandable. It's for a particular reason.
Right.
But there's no reason I would, I cannot perceive of a situation where I am not going to see a given MCU film or series to some point,
including the quote unquote minor ones like Ant-Man or whatever. Like even
well,
though they count them out, I'm still going to go see those movies.
Correct.
I'm still going to be
correct.
But go beyond the box office aspect to this. Go beyond the experience aspect, because I mean, part of it is just you want to see it before other people can spoil it for you, right? There's that aspect.
Yeah.
Well, that's internet culture in general.
That's internet culture in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Luckily, I don't have that thing, but go ahead.
To what point do these stories become so compelling, though, outside of the fact that we already read these stories in the comics, drive us to the theaters?
It's the Howard Stern effect for me.
Okay.
For as far as the MCU goes. Okay? I know they're going to go that Feige is going to go back to Marvel Comics history. Mm-hmm. He's going to cherry pick the pieces out he wants to insert into the films, and he's going to build MCU world around it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's not going to be exact. In some cases, it will. I mean, there are
more like amusement.
There are pieces in the three Thor films that are culled directly from Walt Simonson and Jack Kirby's runs on the books, visually and contextually. I mean, there's items that were shown in the movies. There are things that are exact.
Right.
Now, there's also a ton of stuff they just made up.
Yeah.
Right.
Like the way they chose to pull the aspect of Planet Hulk into Ragnarok, super smart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? Without going down
I never read Planet Hulk, though.
I never
so it was
really?
No,
okay.
I never did. But I mean, to me, that was when I realized how much that they had actually culled out of that. I'm like, wow, that actually fit in there really nicely.
So I think that what it comes down to when I say the Howard Stern effect is I'm always going to be interested in seeing what they've come up with and seeing where he goes. It would have to be a pretty bad film. I'm one of the guys, most people, when you talk to them, they generally consider Thor: The Dark World to be the weakest of all MCU films.
Yeah.
Eternals,
okay.
Probably.
I wouldn't agree. I think Thor. There were aspects of Eternals that I was like, all right, I'm entertained.
Cool.
But
Yes,
Dark World was hard.
Eternals had some really bright spots, and what they were able to do with that material was nothing short of amazing.
Yeah, considering.
But way too long. But that's a whole other conversation. My thing with it is like, and this used to be my argument for Pixar as well.
Yeah.
You can go back and say Bugs is the weakest Pixar film. But it's still... Or no, Bug's Life, sorry.
Bug's Life, yeah.
Bug's Life. You can say A Bug's Life is the weakest Pixar film. But at the end of the day, it's still better than 85% of what's out there.
Sure.
So you can say Dark World may be the weakest MCU film, but what are you really saying? Are you saying it's not entertaining?
Yeah. But you know what? That's the thing. That's the problem. People don't apply context to any of this stuff.
Correct.
Because most of the stuff is better than 90% of the stuff that we see on a regular basis.
Sure.
Even the DC stuff is more powerful and more compelling
Sure.
than 90 of the stuff. And I mean, like, the problem with the DC stuff is that in comparison to not so much the film,
Yeah.
but in comparison to the organization of the MCU.
It's a tough
Yeah.
path for them.
Yeah.
It is.
And it's just too bad because on their face, those are really good movies.
Yeah.
Like whoever would thought, I don't know how anybody else feels about it, but whoever would have thought that Ben Affleck would have made Batman would have been one of my favorite Batmen, you know? Like
Right.
or like, okay, Henry Cavill is kind of obvious as Superman. He's a little too on the nose for Superman. I like him. I think he's fantastic. I'm glad we're going to get more. But Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, like to see, like when they first announced her as Wonder Woman, I was like, really?
Seems a little slim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she just was Wonder Woman.
She has
Right.
a presence.
Like,
She has a
oh my,
presence.
you know,
Exactly.
this works perfectly. So, and look, the Snyder Cut, all
Yeah.
controversy aside, for me, was kind of like what I was hoping that the Thor movies would be.
Yeah.
Because the Thor movies had the opportunity to be like Lord of the Rings movies because of all the lore behind them. I know that's a money pit, you know, so
Sure.
they couldn't have done it. But if they really leaned into the lore of Thor, you wouldn't have
It would have been a
needed
Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
it
you
would
wouldn't
have
have
truly
needed
been
any
the
of that.
MCU Game of Thrones.
Exactly, and I
never
think
did.
I think the Justice League, the Snyder's Justice League, was the closest it came to an ancillary part of the DCEU that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
But
Right.
it's so all encompassing, so
Yeah.
wide in scope that it's a completely different experience all by itself. And to see what they dumbed it down to is kind of even more heartbreaking.
Yeah.
You know, and the fact that even though they finally expanded the Justice League to what it was originally supposed to be, but there's so much dirt on it.
Yeah.
You know, there's so much controversy on it that it's never going to
Yeah.
live up to what it. But imagine if we had just gotten that as a raw movie without all of that. That would have been amazing.
Well, we
That
did
would've-
initially. That's the problem. We did get it as a raw movie.
Well,
and then it fell under, you know, people started kicking the ball around.
So
yeah.
real
Yeah.
quick,
Yeah, who knows where the controversy started and where it ended. Yeah,
30
absolutely.
seconds or less. Steve, where do you rank Black Panther 2 in your pantheon of MCU films?
I can't.
And I don't mean like number 13. I mean like what was like where do you put it in the pack? Like ballpark figure in the pack. And what's your closing thought on it?
So, I mean, here's the thing. It did its job for me. It entertained me for 2.5 hours, which is which is something. Okay.
I feel like I entertained you guys for 2.5 hours too today.
Pretty close. An entirely
first hour, the second
entirely
hour,
different way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unplugging
You know, it lands. You know,
captivating.
I have a hard time doing that because in my mind, a movie really only has for me one job to do, and that you have to entertain me while I'm sitting there in front of it. And if you do that, I generally don't pick apart too much. I mean, so I'm a terrible critic from that end of things. Something has to jump out at me to really kind of get my attention, and then I'll start looking deeper.
So you'd say middle of the pack for this one then?
I'd say middle to higher, probably. Probably more middle of the pack. Again, it's a movie where it's filled with things, and a lot of things they do really well, and a lot of things they don't do quite as well. So I mean, it's like most big budget movies like this. You get some stuff that's really amazing, and they handled it really well, and then you get some stuff that was not quite so
they don't do a
successful.
good job on.
Yeah.
Hassan, where do you put it?
Okay, so I think you'd have to go the top 3 are Avengers, the first Avengers.
This is for you.
Okay. Infinity War,
That speaks for all of us.
Black Panther
on the planet.
and then
Those are your top 3?
the Avengers,
Really?
Infinity War, Black Panther, and then
I agree with Infinity War.
and
yeah.
then
Oof.
I would say Winter Soldier, then Endgame, then this movie.
Really?
And then the rest of the MCU. So I think this movie's number 6, but it's still in the top 10.
Yeah,
you know?
Okay, all right. So you're top of the pack then. You're top 10.
Yeah, it's up there.
You?
I mean, there's
Mike?
some movies
Hang on,
that are
I'm getting
not.
me, don't worry.
There's some movies that are great. I think all the MCU movies are great except for Thor: Dark World. But this, like I give this movie a high mark of respect for what it had to do.
This for me is the Age of Ultron of the MCU, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean
That would be a negative way for me.
We're gonna see things in this in the next few years that you're gonna go back and go, oh yeah, jeez, this was a much more important film than we thought it was, because on a tertiary glance, just watching it and walking away from it, I sat there going like, all right, it like you said, it did its job. 2.5 hours passed really fast. It was entertaining. There was a hero's journey in Shuri and what she had to overcome. Made all the sense in the world. Namor was a good antagonist, not a villain. Good antagonist. But ultimately, again, I walked away feeling, like my dad said, just to bring it full circle, strange movie. A lot of stuff going on here. Building two worlds up at the exact same time. Tall order to do it. Had to overcome a lot of stuff that you don't obviously... it's in the film, but obviously holds greater meaning outside the film than inside the film. So you kind of go in, unless you were living off of social media and under a rock, you didn't know Chadwick Boseman passed. If you
would have been like, why'd they make all these decisions?
Right, exactly. Like, why'd they kill this person? That's a really bold move to kill off the Black Panther like that.
This is
the
a
opening
franchise
wow,
killing
unbelievable! I never saw that coming. So ultimately, I think it's a middle of the pack movie, but it's going to be.
I think it murders every other movie in the world.
Like Captain America: First Avenger. I like that. That's one of my favorite.
You didn't let me finish, like you never do. In trailers, that teaser trailer was the most amazing trailer. The only trailer, it's up there in the pantheon of trailers with the Pearl Harbor trailer.
But it was the anti-Pearl Harbor. I enjoyed
it. The Pearl Harbor trailer is probably still in my book the greatest trailer I've ever seen.
It's Leviathan.
Was best
huh?
It's Leviathan.
Come on,
making
dude.
that. All right,
you're on a completely different wavelength than that.
What do you guys think out there? Comment in our comment feed. We got a lot to talk about. I know we didn't even talk about the untimely passing of Kevin Conroy. That's because next week we will devote an entire show to the definitive voice of Batman. I was lucky enough to interviewed him a few years ago, and so we're gonna run that interview as well. So we will dive into the Kevin Conroy tragedy, which it sucks because, I when you were saying Ben Affleck, who knew he was going to make such a great Batman? That is the world of live action Batman. It's hit or miss. Kevin Conroy was the constant.
I don't honestly think you can contextualize his contribution like in one sentence. Like in one idea. It's just beyond. Yeah.
So we will dive into the Kevin Conroy passing next week. We will run the interview. We'll talk a little bit about his place and his legacy and what he contributed, just like you said. So, but in the meantime, go see Black Panther 2, Wakanda Forever.
It's worth your time.
Do as we tell you. Do as we say.
and join us in the comment feed later. We will see you guys next week. Hi guys, Mike Dolce here from the Rogue Wave podcast. If you like this video, please feel free to like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. It really helps us out. Leave a comment, let us know what you'd like to see in future episodes, and tune in every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern for a brand new episode of the Rogue Wave podcast.